reputation for not closing it, and that was before all
yes.
these
Yeah.
encounters.
The Babylon working, that's called. Yeah, with L. Ron Hubbard, he was part of that ritual as well.
Yep, Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard. They opened up the Trans-Plutonian portal to the Greys and the Reptilians too. But the Greys are the nice ones, and the Reptilians are the evil ones. You know.
Did you read the books of Kenneth Grant? It's one of the students of Crowley. He talks at length about that whole ritual at one point. It's like a book called Outer Gateways. Maybe you've read it. I don't know.
I haven't, but I've just read articles about it enough to know, because that was really interesting, because the picture of, that portrait of Lamb you have dates back to the 1920s. Well before all the gray sightings were later, and after they didn't close that portal. So it's really validating that what happened is, in the United States, that they opened up a Trans-Plutonian portal that never got closed, and those entities kind of manifest better here than they naturally would.
That's exactly what his student also talks about, Kenneth Grant. He has that book that I just mentioned, Outer Gateways, is really about that Trans-Plutonian gateway that is opened, and he believes that all these influences are now leaking in and actually fucking up reality in a way, at least on this side of reality. That's exactly what the Talamites.
My understanding of the Greys is that they're actually fairly decent, and they maybe prevented us from blowing ourselves up in nuclear war in the 60s. I hear.
Yeah, I don't think they're evil. I just think they kind of have this quality of being teachers, but pretty harsh teachers, but teachers nonetheless. And they're very much there's a good book written by Hancock. I'm not super big fan of Graham Hancock, but that book was pretty interesting. It's called Supernatural. And he goes, it's a dumb title, but he goes pretty deep into the whole DMT experiences. And he links elves, the stories of abduction by elves, with how with abduction by aliens and all, and the Greys and all that stuff. And there's so many similarities between these ancient stories and the Greys. So it's pretty much, he basically suggests it's the same entity that's basically intervening in this reality, messing a bit around, but not necessarily here to fuck us up. But it's like any race of beings, right? They have their interests. So maybe they sometimes do give us a hit if we go against their interests, but they're,
My understanding is that the Greys are fine, but the problem is the Trans-Plutonian realm also hosts those reptilian ones, those tall ones, and those things are predatory, though.
Yes, that's very much
That's
true.
like a demonic predatory race,
Yeah.
And the problem is they got in, too, and they're the issue. They're scary. That's scary shit.
I have
the
a
Greys
bit
are
of
very intellectual, the Greys are very intellectual and evolved. They're not scary.
So I've been around 2011, me and a few guys, we were I'm still into all the occult stuff, but mostly I'm just trying it out, with my own experiments with drugs and anything like that. And I was into the whole left-hand path stuff too. Then I was just exploring it a bit, and I also found it interesting that so I was about these gateways and everything, and opening these gateways, and we kind of tried something similar with the Greys, and you do get feedback in a really weird way. If you do rituals aimed at the Greys, you do get feedback, and I don't think they're evil, but I think their agenda is to... From what I get is that their agenda is to basically get a hold on humanity's progress and what we're doing. And as soon as they feel we're not going their way, they immediately intervene. And it looks like coincidences, but basically it's them fucking up the fabric of reality in order to get what they want. So they basically do have an aim for us, but it's unclear what exactly they want. While the reptilians, I think that there's one guy that I know at the time when I got into that.
They're lower dimensional. I can tell you just now, I'm second generation, and people who work with this, and getting back to that, actually, interestingly, how there was a big boom of that in the 80s, and how the Heaven's Gate cult was
Yes.
actually people who believed that the Greys were the second stage of human evolution.
Yes.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
And in the 80s, my mom was one of the people actually who I'm second generation and working with spirits and stuff. And my mom in the 80s actually had a visitation by a Grey that said that they had leaked into our society and that they were among us and that they were masquerading as people, and that some of them were good, like the Greys, and they were benevolent and they prevented us from nuking ourselves and that kind of thing.
Yes.
But then also like that other race, the reptilian race, is like it's a lower dimensional demon race, and it's really problematic.
There's like one guy who I know kind of is like an occultist, and I think he's pretty legit at what he does, and he does have interesting stories to tell. And he kind of has this idea. I don't know, maybe you can verify it or not, but he has this idea that reptilians, these entities at least, they're like the natives of this planet, he says. And that kind of aligns with the whole Warhammer thing. I find very ironically that in like the fantasy Warhammer, the reptilian race is also kind of native, and all the other ones came a little bit later.
Well,
and
when these
fucked them over.
people kind of channel these fantasy worlds, it ends up,
Yes.
ironically, it ends up being more closer to reality than what consensus reality is.
I totally believe that. Like, I have this theory that when you're in a state of inspiration and you're writing or you're painting, that you're actually like channeling reality in a way. Like parts of reality that are not as obvious. That's what you're doing through art. And like art can manifest in many ways. It can manifest in like writing a fantasy novel. It can manifest in like painting or sculpting. But I do think that when you're creating, you're channeling in a way. I don't think and I think even in ancient times, they didn't see much of a difference between the state of possession by spirits and the state of possession you have while you're doing art. Like for them, it was basically the same. So I kind of think, yeah, you're right. Like there's something about creating and like writing and then accidentally almost channeling the truth in a way.
Yeah. You like tap into something and you're not aware of it and you think it's like a really creative fantasy, but it's like the reality you probably couldn't handle.
Yeah, that's why I take fiction seriously sometimes. Like more seriously than some people would.
Yeah, it's more valid than the shit that sleepers spit out, you know?
That's essentially what I do. It's like, I try to break myself down and go back to the dirt of reality so that I can make something more resonant. Or I also just go somewhere and get the inspiration and seek guidance.
Yeah, I'm like a left-hand path yogi. I worship Kali Ma big time, and I also work with the archangels and stuff. I'm not really into. I don't really like go to seek different connections and work with sigils a lot because like I don't know. I've had some bad experiences and I've had to kill a lot of shit on the astral plane. I've had to do some murdering in my time, and so I'm very cautious that there's a layer of reality on which God's light doesn't reach very much, and they've gone far towards the egoism. Like if you get to the Tree of Life Kabbalah stuff, the top of it, Ein Sof, Keter, it's like it's God in this state where it's completely giving and there's no receiving. And then as you go down to earth, we're in the receptive state, and that's why people have the hungry ghost and they seek and they don't know what they're looking for because they're in a state of receiving God. But I think that below that, you get into the subterranean levels of that, which is like the clip-off, you know? You get into the clipophic layers, and that's like and in those layers, you get further and further from God's light, and they have like less prana in the air, they have less life energy in the air. And because they're so deficient, they go to like loosh people and try to steal it from us. And they use the fact that people are asleep and they're unprotected, they're not spiritually connected, to go around and they just harvest negative energy. And it's not dramatic, it's not whatever usually. It's just people sit in their depression, the alcoholic suffers, and they go to them and then they take the energy from the air and they feed it because they don't get enough down there, you know. And it's very nasty level of reality, but you kind of have to be careful because that level of reality, it's so dominant now because people are so asleep, they're basically like farm animals to be looshed by these things. in the state, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
You
there's
know
a
what
lot
that-
of hostile beings who go around, you know?
There's like this idea in tantrism which I really like, because like you say, you're like left-hand path, like Kali Ma kind of angle is what you have. And I find it interesting that I'm actually like at the moment, well, I've been interested in Tibetan Buddhism, which is kind of a shitty name because it's basically Vajrayana, which is basically a school of Buddhism that's
Diamond vehicle.
yeah, you have it in Mongolia too, so it's not just like a Tibetan thing, and you have it even in Japan in some
Yeah,
sects.
it's the diamond vehicle Buddhism.
Yeah.
They took all the
Yeah.
tantric techniques and they feel like at least that they developed it to a higher, more efficient level.
Yeah, so I'm really into that, and they have like a very interesting idea about the hell realms, they call. Like there are some yogis apparently, and it kind of reminds me of what I read in the Kabbalah. Like there's this rabbi, I forgot his name now. There was this rabbi in Prague or somewhere, and he wrote a lot about the Klipot. And maybe you remember, I don't know. Like I'll check it
Was
up
it
later.
Isaiah?
Could be. Yeah, could be. And this guy, he wrote about the Klipot, and he says there are some rabbis, which is basically also what you have in Tibetan Buddhism as well, is that you have like some rabbis, some monks, basically. They go into these demonic realms in order to face these demons, be challenged by them, but not like get into, like not get scared. And like from that filth, they end up actually like becoming gods. So they go through the rabbi basically says, then you go through the Klipot, and on the other side of the Klipot you basically, it's like a fractal, you know, like at the other side of the fractal you're at a fractal again. So they become their own gods. Yeah. So they create their own universe within the filth of the Klipot. But it takes like a tremendous amount of skill in order not to be consumed by the demons and like be turned into a demon yourself. And just like you say, like a hungry ghost kind of situation where you're just like continuously seeking.
I had a point where I was like about to initiate in the Kabbalah.
Yeah.
And then interestingly, the correspondent to Malkuth in the Kliphof, that particular demon. Do you know which demon presides over that?
Which part of the Klipot?
The part that corresponds to Malkuth, the bottom.
Lilith, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, Lilith. Yeah.
I had a point where like I was trying, that those energies were trying to like recruit me, and the name would like go through my head again and again and all this stuff. And I ended up siding with Archangel Michael though, and I'm right hand with that. And it's, you know, like Kali Ma isn't really like an inverted deity like that. Like people, it's they eat the demon. What Kali Ma does is she eats demons to reprocess them as good energy and presides over time, you know. And Saturn, but she wards against Saturn, you know. So I wear the amulet and I work with the yantra because it actually like prevents Saturnian influence. Like I've actually been physically healing some injuries I have very rapidly through it because it prevents all the death energies from reaching your body like that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean,
I ended up going through the Spear of Life because I had certain attachments that were like in the Spear and more in the light side of it. And I didn't want to give that up, and I felt like I would have been consumed by. I felt like they was trying to exploit my weakness to sensuality and sexuality, and to take it to like a lower place, to take it to the place that she's in, rather than the place like Aphrodite is in, and like the Venetian deities that I otherwise gravitate to. You know, like Kamadeva and Rati, and all that. And like I ended up going the other way and going towards more that divine path, because I've never seen somebody who wasn't consumed by the Kliphof, and I almost think it's a trick, because I think those levels of reality go to the egoic stuff, and I think it was trying to appeal to like the egoic, carnal part of me, you know?
Yeah, it eventually will. Like it's very easy to be tempted into that. Like I had it happen to me tons of times, and it's well, you have to basically, it's like you have to dive, you know, like it's like you have to dive into the filth and then take back some trinkets. It's basically alchemy. Like you use the filth in order to turn it into something else, but it can be very unhealthy. Like I read like this one book by Peter Levenda,
Yeah,
He
I fight it. It comes
yeah.
from I literally fight. I'm at a place where I literally fight it. I have associations of Archangel Michael. I wear his
Hmm.
sigil and the sigil for the angels of the armies of heaven from the Book of
Yes.
Solomon, and I have the yantra for Kali Ma.
Hmm.
So a lot of the time, sometimes I'll feel something in my environment, and I'll put out the chant to Kali Ma, and I'll hear it scream, and it just get obliterated. Sometimes
Hmm.
once in a while, I obliterate something. Because I'm in my own personal issues and stuff. So at times, I'm generating a lot of negative energy, and things come to try to loosh me, and I have to fight them. And I kind of end up going the other path where I've kind of purified my environment. Like I keep Organite, I channel those deities, and like I have kind of a relatively pure environment. And then I've moved to like the internal alchemy and the Nadan and the
Hmm.
yoga.
It's I mean, like from what I still find it. Like I'm tempted always to check it out. That's my problem, I guess. Like I'm always tempted to go check these realms, but I up until now found my way back, and hopefully I can always do that. But I feel like I need to go there because there's always something there that I can salvage and that I can use here. So I know over there I'm in danger to be like not just obliterated. That's not really what I feel, but it's like to get like to become like a hungry kind of ghost. That might be a shitty thing, but
Well, and a lot of it's not so spooky. It's just about
yeah, no,
spiritual dead ends.
yeah,
Like I know about what falling to the first path of the cliff is, and it's basically like people enter the sexual union with these certain deities, and they're
yes,
basically being kind of used as batteries, but at the same time they enter into like an ecstatic state. So it's not really what people would think of hell, and that they don't really
hmm,
suffer, but it's just kind of a spiritual dead end where they're engaged in this constant sexual, and there may even be love there in some cases.
yes,
Although those deities are individual too. Like I know people who keep a variety of spirits from the light and dark side, and it's very individual. They're all individuals. Like
yeah,
so it's. But I personally found that I was put off. I wouldn't say I dived in, but I'd say I dipped. And then when I pulled up, I just didn't like it, and I just didn't like the energy of everything. And I went. Now that I know what this actually is, that kind of temptation and whatever. Now that it wasn't like unknown, I realized I just simply didn't desire it, and then I banished and warded and made like really strong alliances so that my environment's clean, and I kind of just went away from that. I don't think it's playing with fire. I don't think you should, and
hmm,
the archangels hold just as much power. So why work with the archons when the archangels hold just as much power and they're not malevolent and they're much more generous in dispensing it? You know what I mean? It's a trick. Because
it's
anything
yeah,
you could get from the clip, if you could get from the Kabbalah, and instead of fucking eating you, when an
hmm.
archangel denies you, they just look at you and they can just tell you're not ready or something, and they just don't.
What I find interesting in the Kabbalah, I don't know if you agree with it, but Crowley, he kind of claimed this is that when you reach the At, like at the threshold, like that's the only place in the Tree of Life where you have like a demonic entity that will pop up before you make the crossing. So there's even there like a demon, but he just pops up there, and there he will test you. And beyond that, your ego is destroyed if you basically manage to uh, like survive. Like Karanzan, that's his name. Karanzan. If you survive his tests, then you basically go to the next level, and then you're very close to the three upper Sephiroth. So that's like one place in the Tree of Life where you have like that demon presence there, and it's like interestingly right up the
Do you keep a
above.
lot? Do you keep a lot of spirits and stuff?
If what like what
Do you keep spirits?
keeping spirits me.
Yes.
I usually work with several like how to say. There's like a few Tibetan like saints or like how you call that basically like they're kind of like
What does that sound?
hmm? Oh no, it's outside. It's like just traffic. uh,
Oh.
Yeah, and
I
it's pretty noisy.
was like, what do you keep there? You got some hellhounds at your door?
I wish. No, it's I work with like this Tibetan. Well, with a couple of Tibetan lamas on the basically on whatever you want to call it on the astral plane or something, and they basically provide some sort of like level of initiation always. I work
Yeah.
with a few.
Like Rinpoche and stuff.
Yeah, I work. I love to work with Longchenpa. Like he's the guy from Jochen, which is like the. It's a bit like Zen Buddhism meets Vajrayana Buddhism, kind of.
Oh,
It's
like
like
Dozen, you mean?
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
forgot
yeah,
how-
and
yeah.
it's like, yeah, I know him.
Yeah, so I really love to work with that, and I do
Is
like
he,
working.
like
Yeah,
still a spiritual teacher who's available? I believe it.
yeah, I
He was
like. He's really accountable. I feel as a spirit. So
some people's presence, like they get the golden body and then they're off in the universe. You know,
basically,
some
yes.
people are sticking around as teachers, but that's basically charity. They're basically forsaking their infinite. They're forsaking some of their infinite time to
Yeah,
stick
that's
around
true.
as a teacher.
That's very true. Yeah, you feel that when you work with these ones. And there's a few dakinis that I also work with. That's a bit more tricky, but I
Yeah.
like to work with. So I work with a lot of tantric stuff, and I also integrated some. How to say? Well, some Egyptian stuff from, but that's kind of the Crowley influence. Some chaos magic. I also included. I also included some because I'm from Belgium, and there's like this town. I used to live in Ghent, which is not too far from Brussels. And the interesting thing was, me and my friend there, we figured out that the town was built right next to a confluence of two rivers, and that confluence was devoted to a horse goddess, so like a Celtic horse goddess. And we started to do rituals with that, and then to bring her into basically our realm, like do some dealings with her. And it was a pretty good entity. And every time that I do local work, I usually like try and get her on the good side.
I like
so to speak.
nature spirits.
Yeah, so she's very accountable too, and a bit wild, but that kind of comes with horse spirits. Like they're very much like always. Well, you can kind of imagine, right? They're like mobile. Like they want to change fast. They are. They're useful for getting things into your life quickly. They produce steady change. Like that's also one thing that you can expect, not radical change, but steady change. So yeah, that's a good thing. So yeah, I work with that one too, but that's only locally. And now that I am in Taiwan, I work sometimes with these Taoist gods because there's a lot. That's the good thing about this place here, is that you
Like the three emperors.
yeah, so you have like all these local spirits and gods here, and you have their temples, and basically you can immediately start like your ritual, right? Like in one of these temples, like you don't even need to do that much. Like everything is already set up for you to please that god. While in our cultures, it's kind of like we kind of lost our ability to communicate with these entities, like on an
humanity became mundane because of the globalist agenda to make humanity mundane.
Yeah, so we basically lost the how to do book, and now we are all like figuring it out as we. It's like we kind of want to fix the car, and we're like doing it like trial and error. That's basically what most of spirituality is now, I feel, in the West. It's like, it's not bad, but we're like doing trial and error. Like we're trying this out. Oh, okay, that doesn't work. Let's try this. Ah, that seems to work. Okay, let's try that. So we're kind of like starting from scratch, which is not bad.
I do a lot of elements from Neidan, even though I consider myself a yogi who does Neidan, does other arts.
Yeah, well, I'm really interested in Taoism because I do feel it's a very it's a land-based religion. So you basically work continuously with the forces of the land, but it's not very transcendent, you know? Like you will not get out of Taoism the extreme transcendence you will get out of other
but Neidan mechanically lays out how to interface with your energy body in a way that grows it and sustains it, and lays out the mechanics for it very well, because The stuff yoga doesn't tell you is that like you really shouldn't do too much third eye stuff until you've done a lot of heart stuff and a lot of the sexual center stuff, because the base isn't good and you can lose your head, or you can feel like your head is just you ever have that feeling in the third eye where you overcharge it and like it just feels like this intense pressure in it?
Like when you do yoga work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everything, it feels like everything's like pulling into it or something, but nothing comes of it. It's weird. You can lose your head like that, you know?
Which yoga do you do?
Well, these days I just work with Kalima and the yantras, but I implement the Neidan principles of when that energy floods me, like what do I do with it, and how do I store it, and how do I make it useful, and that's all. I learned all that from Neidan. I channel the energy from working with the deities, and the female deities in particular, because they're the Kundalini awakeners, you know.
Yeah.
And they pour energy through the sigil. I'm sure you could probably reduce how much you eat through it, even. And do all kinds of things, because that's just pure energy into your body. And but what you actually do with that, I've learned a lot of that from Neidan about how you should focus on like the lower dantian or the hara, and that you should store there because it's the governor channel. So when you pulse energy to it, the energy fills all of the 8 major centers equally. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like the channel equalizer. And it's really important that when you work with a lot of weird energies and intense energies, you got to like put it into there so it distributes evenly, or else you'll end up with an imbalance. And you can make it fill your vessel and expand your vessel instead of gathering in your vessel in a place like your heart where you become over emotional, or your head where you lose your head.
Did you ever do like anything? How to say? Did you ever dabble in any Western left-hand bad stuff?
No, I'm put off by it.
It's too edgelord, you find?
Crowley's vibe grosses me out.
Crowley grosses you out?
Yes, I tend to a very light vibe. Like somebody I know people in the OTO and stuff, and they kind of have these kind of sketchy though. Like they're kind of like
they are, yeah.
They're like, one of them said that like, oh, they're like they're on a standoff with Archangel Michael.
Yeah.
And I work with Archangel Michael, and they're like, that's fine or whatever. You like disclosed it, but it's like, why does Archangel Michael want your head? He's very decent and fair, you know. You're doing something wrong, you know. Violating karmic law. And it's just all that shit doesn't respect karmic law enough. But he did a big reading of me, and I paid him and charged sigils and everything. He's like the real deal, you know. Otherwise, the payment wouldn't have been any good to do an I Ching reading for a few hours and put in the effort.
Yeah.
And he did like a full I Ching reading, but like when he did the energy reading of me, it's like he said mine is very light, and he said I'm like the closest thing to like a light mage. I tend to a very pure type of energy thing. I'm very against like things that are harmful or things that dance around with low energy, like low vibration shit. I mean, I'll put it like this: if I hear a spirit in my area, and then that spirit tinnitus kicks in, if it's a low sound, I fucking eat it. If it's a high sound and it sounds like bells, or you know the difference. You know what I mean by that. That the frequencies correspond to like when you hear them, they make like a low. The demons almost sound like a radio moving, like you're tuning in radio. You know what I mean?
It's did you ever get these electric charges when you see these demons in you? Like I get that sometimes. Like when I see them, it's like an electric charge, like going through my body. It's not like their charge, but it's almost like my own body is like overcharging with electricity. That's kind of the feeling I get.
Yeah. Anytime I have any kind of attack, and by the time it's all done, whether I win or lose, lately I've won. In the past, I lost. I always wake up like a live wire.
Yeah, that's exactly the feeling I get too. Like this, it's like I'm stuck to some cords or whatever the fuck. But it's like that's the feeling I get too.
I think it's because they bang into your energy body a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. There's like I had that a lot, by the way. With I dabbled only for like a month or two, whatever. Like I think it was only like a month, but I was really interested. I got this book. Maybe you heard about it. It's like the Voodoo Gnostic workbook. It's like this Crowley slash voodoo like slash whatever next to it, and I dabbled a little bit in that. Like I wanted to see what that was all about, but I immediately backed off because actually I feel like you immediately go into Negro territory, and it's and like the entities you get then, like they're full African, and yeah, so you get like pretty much like it attacks the entire time basically on your energy. So you feel like you're more on the defense than you're actually like doing a dialogue, you know? So I backed off from that. I was like, this is not interesting enough for me. Like I'm actually moving into a territory where I feel like I'm not particularly welcome.
I don't really want to start any battles with those kinds of things, but I'll just say that they're my enemy on the basis of I'll ignore them, but when they're in my space and stuff, I would never invite them in. And if they try to intrude on my space, it's like we're gonna fight.
Yeah,
but I eventually got rid of the ego in that, and I found that really the best way to do it is hands off. Like if you invoke Archangel Michael, an angel just swings by and just fucking obliterates them, and they scream or whatever, and they're done. And if you invoke Kali Ma, like it's very interesting how Kali Ma kills them. It's so instant, like because she's known as the one who consumes and recycles the souls of the demons, and she's like the benevolent vampire too. Besides just being the mother in the time, it's like the positive usage. It's like the divine usage of vampirism, where you take all the grime and you recycle it. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're taking all the lower vibration shit and you're bringing it back to the middle and higher worlds by recycling that energy. And so when you invoke her, like you'll see these demons that were really scary and they're pretty decent level, but they're gone. Like you just you hear like a and like you see like this bright like red, you see like a fucking spark where they were, and they're gone. That's it. They're obliterated. Their soul's done, you know. They're cashed.
I had this vision once after I worked with Kali. That was like a few workings at a few years back.
Once I saw she could do that, I was tormented by that kind of shit. So it's like, wow, I can really rest now because you know what? Like as long as I'm worshiping her actively and like I can invoke that, it doesn't matter what degree of thing it is. It's dead. It's dead. Yeah. She'll fucking defend her worshippers.
That's true. Yeah. All Kali worshippers say that they're all like very satisfied with her. There's like no one who complains and says like, I don't think I'll get back to her.
Yeah, there's no more like of a vigilant defender because her mantra, the first repetition, everything's dead if it's harmful, and she separates too. It's not like she doesn't. There's no friendly fire. Of course, they're a deity. They're just immediately aware of like who's violating your divine rights, and they're done.
Yes.
Doesn't matter if they were spooky, they were bothering you for months, they were stronger than you. They're done. They're cashed.
When I worked with Kali once, I had like this vision. Like it was a few days after I worked with her. It was like just a regular type of sacrifice I did, and just a simple prayer, but a very intense one. And a few days later, I immediately was caught in like a very short hallucination. It was like a bit in the evening, and I was like around this fire, and I saw Kali dance around it together with these yogis, like with their gray ash skin, right? And
like a gory.
Yeah, exactly, like the Agoris. And I was in like it was like I'd taken ecstasy. That's kind of the feeling I had. Like it felt exactly like that. Like I was in a pure ecstasy, like for maybe just like 15 seconds, but it was like the best feeling I ever had, and I still miss it, to be honest. Like whenever I think back on that, in that vision, it was like, wow, this was actually a fantastic feeling. So I can see like why Agoris...
That happens regularly when you do her mantra.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and pretty much every time I do her mantra, it happens for intervals. It's happened to me for 15 seconds, 30 seconds, like times like that. It's brief because then when you get meta aware of it too much, and you analyze, then you get out of it.
Yeah.
Then you're just in your fucking head. But yeah, it's despite all the scary imagery, like she defends you like your spiritual mother and fills you with bliss. It's really like she's the most benevolent, powerful deity of anything,
That's true. I know a guy who actually lives in India, and he lives in Tarapit, which is like the Kali site, you could say, where all the Aguris are, and like where there's a big temple of Kali. He actually lives there. He's like an American guy from Philadelphia, and he's like all about Ma. That's all he talks about. So it's pretty interesting. Like I'll show you some videos of him when he's there. And let's see. I cannot find this video, but I'm finding like all these Tarapit videos.
No, she's very. You know what it is? The scary thing is, the only scary element of her is if you're like a normie who has all the material attachments still, she'll slash at. But if you're somebody who's already fairly awakened and you just need to heal and get protection and gather yourself, but you're in like a humbled state with little attachment, it's just pure bliss and protection because there's nothing to cut away at. She cuts away at everything, and then she builds you up. And if you enter at a state where you don't have a lot to be cut away at, it's very positive. That's the sign I keep.
So this is him in Tarapit, which is like all Kali everywhere you look is Kali. Even the stores are all about Kali.
That's a special incense blend that in particular is meant for. I'm actually playing the Kali mantra in the background. I don't know if it's audible.
I hear like
Yeah.
I hear
I kept thinking that I had that one album of Aphex Twin playing, where it's just like a music box.
Those are protective Bajit voices.
Yeah, that's when you're anxious at 4 a.m. and you don't want to see something nasty. You play you play that in the background and you go about your life because she doesn't really care about like the yogic purity stuff as much. There's some deities like I feel like they come through stronger after you bathe and after you do certain pure things. But I feel like she almost doesn't care very much. And that's like that's in scripture, that's not just a notion.
Okay, you share the track? I would be interested to listen.
Yeah, they say Namaha at the end. You're not really supposed to say Namaha. It's not perfect pronunciation. I've gotten all autistic. If you want the perfect pronunciation, and I learned this like when I saw somebody say Om properly. They said Aum. It's Aum. They said when they said it in speaking voice. So there's two variations. There's Kleem and there's Cream, which are the only different interchangeable lines in it, or parts of it. And Kleem is to attract her to you, and Cream is like her seed mantra associated with just her in particular. And it more elicits change, and the Kleem more attracts her to you. And that attraction is kind of, it's kind of like a little bit tantric in nature. I mean, that's the part of Hindu worship, is there's not a taboo about that. As a Westerner, I almost found that very hard to adjust to, that it's normal to have, like, sexual feelings, you know what I mean, during worship and stuff like that. But that's a part of Hindu worship. Not in a crude way, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's not like you're having a tender, like fucking hookup love feeling.
Yeah. But it's just like it just in the way like it fills like the sexual chakra, you know. So there's going to be like some sexual sensations that go with that just mechanically. Because I mean, I was reading scripture and there was like a line about like, oh, one who fills us with, you know, sexual bliss towards spiritual enlightenment and stuff like that, you know. So it's like apparently that's a normal sensation. But yeah, the proper pronunciation is Aum Krim Kalikaye Nama. And this one is a little bit like they Pajitaed a little bit.
Yeah.
They abolished the Brahmin caste. They don't know how to pronounce it anymore.
That's a very good point. Yeah, they did stop that case. Yeah. Now all they have is entrepreneurs, and like a few, and mostly scammers.
But yeah, it's Aum Krim Kalikaye Nama. And you know, you can count it on Mala. Generally, the auspicious numbers are 10 and 108. I tend to do 10 when I'm just trying to touch base and, you know, make a short connection. I tend to do 108 when I'm trying to do like mantra japa.
108 times.
That's how many are on a mala, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then the guru bead. So I guess 109, but they say only 100 of those count. I don't know. But that's if you count up and you're trying to do like a city associated with a certain number of repetitions. But I personally believe city is about making a certain level of connection with the deity rather than like a mechanical number.
Yeah.
And I think that just happens when you're ready, and it depends on who you are and where you are and how you connect, you know. But Kali Ma is considered the number one granter of like mantra, city, and yogic powers as well, which I'm very interested in accumulating. I'm very interested in learning to transcend this level of reality and be able to move freely between other levels of reality. And so I try not to eat meat, and I try to be ethical and do good things and keep my karma clean, so that I'm kind of uninterrupted in like that cultivation.
Like it's like I know this one book about sinister yogis. It's called the book, and it's pretty interesting. Yeah, the way that the yogis then accumulate all these cities and what they're doing then with it. Like sometimes they go crazy, but they're like not always unethical. But some yogis do become kind of unethical. But that's actually kind of interesting. Like yeah.
I consider myself a city seeker, but at the same time, I feel like I've internally cleansed myself to the extent where I'm very against causing harm, and I'm very sensitive to harm on others, and I'm very protective of people. And the reasons I want to develop these powers, I believe, are for amount to, you know, good and a good change in the universe.
I'm like egoistic in a good sense, maybe. Like I seek it too. I seek it for myself, and also if others benefit from it, then I will do it. But I'm not like a kind of person who will seek spiritual evolution to then harm people. That's not even on my radar. To start using it to.
I feel like she wouldn't even accept me as a worshiper, and I wouldn't be resonating like that if that was in my heart, you know, because eventually the worship of her leads to city, you know, when you get really into it and you're wearing the amulets and you're doing the mat chants and you're working with the yantra as a meditative object. It's just something that eventually happens because it's very powerful and it transmits something to you, you know, and as it transmits something to you, it develops you. And personally, like to be frank, I have some romantic interest with spirits, and I really just want to grow spiritually and make sure they grow spiritually and make sure we're all safe and protected. And I want to guard them and glorify them as like my they call that like having a relationship with Shaktis, you know. And there's like these rituals to purify partners into Shaktis and worship them as like the divine feminine, you know.
There's like this is why
and elevate them to a
yeah.
divine feminine space, like literally. As in, they also get elevated, and I'm kind of interested in following that kind of tantric, like love-based path. I used to be very angry and enraged, and like I used to be very prone to anger and aggression and stuff, but I've kind of given up.
There's this what was it say? I forgot. Whatever.
I don't know, but I don't know. I guess I'm just saying, like, this. I realize there's a certain door I need to fit into to be given all the abilities to pursue what I want to pursue. And there's a lot of things I can't take with me through that door. You know, I can't take anger with me through that door. I can't take materialism with me through that door. And I can't take any part of me that doesn't abide with karmic law through that door. You know, so I've kind of pruned those parts of me. I still am. It's an ongoing thing.
This is why I remember, like with chaos magic, the problem I have with that is that they kind of see the spirits that they work with, or the gods, deities they work with, purely as functional sometimes. Not all of them, but sometimes they do. And I rather develop a relationship with these entities than just see them as like, I don't know, like a guy at a restaurant you ask for a glass of cola.
And no, I agree. As somebody who has very close relationships with spirits and the way people do with people, I think it's very ignorant to look at spirits as not equal to yourself. In fact, I think many of them are physically existent on other planes, and they're in a state of astral projection.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and their reality is they're just as real as us on their own planes, and they're projecting here. You know, some of them are completely disembodied, but a lot of them are not. And you know, and so they're just as real as us. And a lot of them are from races where they live many more years than us. And the average one of them is awake spiritually, and you know, and at a level that very few people get to. So to treat them like they're just aspects of your like fucking stupid ape brain is very offensive. You know.
Of course, yeah.
You know, but it's ignorant though. It's like not a very smart. And they treat deities as like aspects of like creativity or something. It's like, no, they're a god, you know.
Yeah,
they're bigger than us, you know. It's like very egoistic to think about these spirits as just like little floating concepts, and these gods as like floating ideals or archetypes.
That's an important part, the devotional relationship. That's a big part of the whole.
They can't admit that they're the little guy in the universe, you know. They can't admit that we're part of this human species and we're very fragile and we don't live a long time, and 99.9% of us are like the Walmart shoppers of the universe.
Yes.
And you gotta be fucking humble, because we come from dirt. We're a very lowly race, really. As far as all the races go, I think we're pretty low. In that the 99.9% of us really are not even awake to the reality of the universe, and they die and live completely unawake to it. And the 0.1% that are kind of have these egoistic notions that the universe revolves around humans. And a big part of Hindu cosmology is that the universe does not revolve around humans, that there's actually uncountably infinite races of intelligent beings that are moving towards this enlightenment or dissension process, depending on their choices, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to keep that humble aspect there, that there's this evolution towards higher spiritual self and higher levels of consciousness that we're all sentient beings are undergoing, and that there's uncountable infinite other dimensions of sentient beings, just dimensions, like fucking levels of reality, like whole universes. Like the universe is so infinite that it may actually be uncountable, you know?
And then you have people who basically live a life wondering if on a planet nearby there might not be life. Like that's their reality. They kind of even assume that alien life is like highly improbable.
Yeah, so, they think that the fucking they think that the sun revolves around the fucking Earth, and that it's all about humans. It's like humans are one of many, many, many species, and these many, many, many species can be on many layers of evolution. And this is far from the fucking highest one. We're just out of the fucking cave, you know? We're just out of being apes. Like we're far from one of the more advanced species. The advanced ones live for tens of thousands of years, and they're born with like 300 IQ average. You know.
This is why I think that flat Earth is kind of like a Christian psyop in many ways, because they want to really bring all the attention back to one planet and one layer of reality, and keep it focused on whatever happened on this layer of reality that is of slight importance. And then,
They
of
want to
course, you can
believe
argue.
like humans are like the central players and the divine versus
Yes.
the evil play. When the reality is that there's actually not a number I can't even fucking articulate of
Mhm.
planets with intelligent species, some more or some less intelligent than us, that are going through this exact ascension descension process, and that drama plays out in every single layer of reality. And it's not centric to us, and the reality is cosmic, I think.
That's why That's why they want to believe that this that Earth is like this petri dish, like whatever the divine is doing, but
Well, and
it's not like that at all.
they think God's playing out the whole drama with the devil right here. It's all around us. That's
Yeah.
it. Like that's the whole like, are the souls going to go to hell or are the souls going to ascend? It's all about Earth. No, Earth is like again one of uncountably infinite places that drama is going on.
I'll be right back.
In my opinion, I feel like that's true. I don't know. Back. Had to unload the car.
Yeah, okay, I'm falling asleep.
Yeah, same. I'm gonna head out. I drank my final sleepy time beer.
I actually fell asleep and I just now woke back up.
Yeah, I drank my sleepy time beer. I'm gonna probably cook a rice dish and gorge myself in food and sleep.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I actually have some rice and chicken.
Yeah, I have some rice and vegetable, and then I'm gonna melt some cheese on it and put some tomato paste in it, so it becomes like a good tomatoey goodness, and some milk, so that creams up a little bit, because tomato paste is kind of purified. It'll be good. Night.
Yep.